Hello, I'm Dr. Bond, and this is a Bond Report. Today we're going to take the topic of a counter, and I wanted to walk through a counter in more detail than what I've talked about. This is a detail of roundsmanship. In roundsmanship, we speak often of the more well-known offensive stratagems, the ploys, the gambit, maneuver, but today we talk about some basic defensive moves, commonly called counters or thwarts, among other things, and examine a counter in a little more detail as an introduction to this very important skill set. Angelo Dundee said it the best, well-known manager of Muhammad Ali for many years. Nobody can ever be the heavyweight champion without two things, the big punch and the ability to take the big punch. So the counter is key. Now, once again, fulfilling the promise there from Michael Caine and Sean Connery and The Man Who Would Be King. Listen up, you sorry lot, we're going to teach you to slaughter your enemies like civilized men. Well, part of that is to stop them from slaughtering you while you're doing that. We're going to take a situation. JF is junior faculty man. PPM is private practice man, a Grand Rounds audience. And this particular counter is called the Experience Jiu-Jitsu counter. Jiu-Jitsu is a martial art in which the enemy's superior weight and strength are not only negated, but they're actually used against him. And that's not that fine of a distinction, but this is where you actually use that weight, that strength. You're not even trying to make them not count, you're trying to make them count for you. The enemy illustrate. And this is the Grand Round situation. JF has just made some statement or other, which, as always, may or may not be correct. Private practice man rises to his feet, which common thing, and says he does not believe that statement to be true at all. Now, junior faculty man tries to put him off in the usual customary, some inconsequential trough, tries to change the subject. Gee, or maybe we're disagreeing on terminology. This could be a different set of cases, blah, blah, blah. There are many diplomatic phrases you can use, and maybe we're both right. But let's keep moving, folks. There's nothing to see here. And sometimes this is an old-time question, and the guy's getting that is Dr. Gothi. And normally, this is a big block of print, but a shortage of time is customarily invoked. A fuller and more rigorous discussion is promised at some never-to-occur future time, unspecified. And it's customary for JF to add, you're JF, you're the junior faculty guy. He's looking very much forward to this talk. No doubt he himself will learn something. It will be very stimulating, most informative, very valuable for the residents, a field day, blah, blah, blah. That's what's normally done at this never-to-occur future time. But in this particular given instance, private practice man will not be put off. He persists and perhaps even begins to become vehement. And he brings up his artillery. He's now saying that in his vast clinical experience of 5,000 or 10,000 or 100 million cases, pick a number, but in any case, far more than an experienced Jew JF, a snot-nosed kid out of a year and a half out of his fellowship. But the tone can vary, but it often shades into the tone in which fighting words are exchanged. A lesser man might do this, but the enemy, in this case, is unwisely chosen frontal assault. And he's taken no forethought and no care. And this is just one more mouthy little twerp to be publicly stepped on for laughs. And we invoke Master Roundsman Muhammad Ali. The bull is stronger, but the matador is smarter. Experience, for those who aren't doctors, is a major metric in medicine. It's equivalent to size, speed, strength in sports, and it's taken very seriously in medical circles, and much priority is given to it in debate, in discussions for the person who's thought to have the most experience on a given topic. Well, gee, what were your results? Whenever people get quiet and listen, and it is taken seriously, what has been your experience? We'd like to learn from you. However, There are other ways to consider experience. Experience is what you get when you're trying to get something else. Experience can be something you're trying to overcome in the manner that the one that comes to me is a guy can really try to work on his golf swing, and all he's doing is grooving a bad golf swing to make it that much harder to unlearn. So his experience is working against him. You can be very, very practiced in doing the wrong thing. This particular guy, and I'm thinking of my own experience here, looked like an Easter Island statue carrying a grudge. I mean, this was actually kind of a startling resemblance. But he's up there basically, this is threatening, I find your lack of podium knowledge disturbing. And basically who Trevor Roper's talking about Hitler here, which isn't an apt thing, but basically the story of his rise to power, he makes the true statement, is the story of his underestimation. He doesn't look like much. We were just now in one of the other talks speaking of whose side God is on. Well, God's normally on the side of the bigger battalions, as Frederick the Great said, but not quite always. And here we have Goliath, his vast, varied experience pumped up in the matter of too many steroids, and he's about to encounter nothing much. This doesn't look like anything much to him. This is just a pipsqueak Jewish kid who seems to be carrying some ridiculous little homemade handheld device. And let's step on this noose, let's crush this guy, go on about our business, and we'll all get together and laugh about it afterwards. Now, you're outnumbered by these guys. This is a joint grand rounds. You have the other residencies there. You have the older guys from town. Typically, the private practice guys are at work, but the older retired guys are in there, and you're outnumbered. But as Virgil said, the wolf never worries about how many the sheep are. And this simple example, here's the beginning experiential thing. This is a case study of what's called Grand Rounds Jiu-Jitsu. In this case, it's done with experience. And this is in this martial art and in this counter, you're using the enemy's superior weight, not merely countering it, but actually it's used against him in the matter. Here's an experience of Grand Rounds Jiu-Jitsu, an illustration of other Jiu-Jitsu, but the enemy's weight and strength is working against him. And JF replies, after being cornered, that basically private practice man has been making the same mistake for 20 or 30 or 40 or 100 years. He's been making the same mistake and calling it clinical experience. And really, the implication can be not only is he wrong, but this phenomenon is actually well known, although not well known to him, and he's had more opportunity than most. If what he says about experience is true, he should have recognized this maybe 1,000, 2,000, 20,000 cases ago. It's made to seem even more one down because he's had that much more of a chance to see it. And while he may have blown one or two chances, he's had this thing under his nose for however many years, and still unaccountably he's none the wiser. Now, this is not a compliment. And so his experience, much more varied, much more deep, much more real than that of JF, who is a callow pipsqueak, a year and a half out of his fellowship, has been not only sidestepped, but used against him. Now, there are numerous ways of exploiting this even further. And the ever so slight raising of the eyes, the surprise, but it's not only this verbal triumph, if you will, this verbal thing, but typically a guy with this much experience is kind of an older guy because he's had the time to get the experience in. But you want to get this doctor empathy, a little bit of worry for this out-of-it-old codger, and the artful pretense of concern for this well-meaning but out-of-it, past-it old gentleman. And so that you can suggest that, well, anybody else might have blown one or two chances. He's blown thousands. So he's the one who's become perhaps not only ineffective, but possibly dangerous. And there's no shortage of ways to simulate full concern for rapidly oncoming dotage, if not simple sheer dullness. And callow JF, who has adopted the facial expression of someone manfully trying but failing to conceal his unsettling concern at the idea that this out of it old duffer seems to be still seeing patients in an unsupervised setting. This can be fairly artfully done, body language, and the implication of onrushing senility, and then invoking it, makes up the second part of the ploy, the faux concern over whether you're not just stupid, you're losing it part. That's scary for anybody over a certain age, which I am now. And this is justly feared and loathed among the older roundsmen. And it's one thing, and we all do, to have the occasional doubts yourself. And everybody Medicare age and older, and what I would have thought of when this was happening to me, old was a very much higher number. It's one thing to have occasional private doubts yourself, we all do, but it's quite another to have a hint, whisper, of this judgment coming from the outside, and worse yet, in a setting with numerous witnesses. It's the stuff of nightmare. Have you always been that stupid, or are you just losing it now? Now, it will be seen that this, while a robust approach to problem resolution, can admittedly cause some problems. This is more of a nuclear war ploy than the usual gentler, kinder ones, and it's remembered without fondness, and it's not a good thing to use lightly. It's all else has failed, and we're pushing buttons like and one of their doctors out in the audience, Dr. Strangelove. It must be admitted that there's a picture of Dale Carnegie with his book. This will not be mistaken for a course about how to win friends. But the other thing is win friends and influence people, and it can be a powerful influence on people. It can be found without an inordinate amount of searching, and here's our role model for books. You're talking more, here's Dale Carnegie and how to win friends and influence people, but it's kind of instructive to see what Niccolo Machiavelli would have made of that. It's an interesting mental exercise to imagine a Dale Carnegie course in practical human relations taught by fellow author, book author, Niccolo Machiavelli, a different approach to human relations. And the master taught that true human motivations, there are really only two, fear and love. And of the two, fear is cheaper, much more reliable, and far easier to instill. And so there's your thing. Now, this can be done, that particular ploy, Clint Eastwood style, and it's even actually rougher than Clint Eastwood because you don't even ask him gee, do you feel lucky? He doesn't even get that. But if it's a more telling effect, if it's done in the true jiu-jitsu manner, to maximum effect, this needs to be done with the appearance of careful control of sympathy, faux empathy, and it can be practiced in the mirror pretty effectively. It's easily around the eyes. And the right pseudo-compassionate head tilt is also very effective. And you want to suggest concern for the old out-of-it dude. This is not only effective, but it's gratifyingly infuriating for the person who just did it to, which is an extra bonus. Once again, there's a bunch of, I'm going to say, codgers in the audience, but the wolf never worries how many the sheep are. You're not going to get much circling around that. The fact is, here's from Oliver, most codgers are not really that artful. The not so artful codger, the codgers in the room are aware of what really happened, but will be aware from their extensive experience that not only the kid with his sling in his hand, there's plenty more where that came from, and they'll sort of not want to wade into that. If the kid had this, God knows how much more he has. Maybe we'll just leave that alone. The kid doesn't look like much standing there. He's tougher than he looks. Let's see how this goes. There's some gray hair in the room, but they understand. And the kid wants to maintain the concerned vibe, but the vibe is also the undertone of, come and get me, old timer. You're going to have to do a hell of a lot better than that. So there's the not so artful codger, and there is a example of a counter, the experienced jiu-jitsu counter So what do we learn today? Well, Henry VIII, maybe he said it, who knows? It's all in the execution. Now it was customary, in fact, in the customary manner of Henry VIII's day, he had his arm out. It was customary to tip those guys so that you got a good result, and you were hoping you tipped it in advance. A smart thing to say. And you're doing this in a grand round setting. So it's more or less you're calling a guy starting to lose it and out of it, but you're never saying that, so you can't be contradicted. Of course you weren't saying that. You can't be contradicted. No one would ever think that as you're giving the body language the full concern that this guy's losing it. And it's happening in public. And people who say public executions don't deter crime have probably never seen one, in the manner that people who say they slept like a baby certainly don't have one. There's more where that came from, old man, come and get me. And that is a powerful thing. So we have here the message for the future. They'll be back next week at the Grand Rounds. Don't tread on me. Friend, you shouldn't be walking here. You should pay a little more octune, because there might just be a mean in here. I myself used this in a previous talk, but a man walking through a minefield by Paul Fussell, former World War II infantryman, said that there's only two things when you're walking through a known minefield, and they're strictly your age. An old guy's thinking about his eyes, a young guy's thinking about his balls, and that's it. There's no other thought in anybody's head at all, one. There have been attempts, the United Nations here, to develop a universal language. It already exists. It's existed for a long time. And this is, no matter what language that sign is the field of minds. My old colleagues, I'm sure they think about me sometimes. This is how, when these guys are going to pull you apart at Grand Rounds, maybe we better leave this guy alone. In fact, here we are walking through a minefield. Note the respect, the body language of respect, and it actually looks, I must say, quite heartfelt. This is a guy who means the respect he's feeling. Gee, I hope I'm not disturbing you. And there'll be also, if you're a kid and one of these, you're the junior faculty guy, the sad fact remains that if you're going to run a protection racket, human nature being what it is, every so often you're going to need to blow up a dry cleaner, and maybe for no reason at all, just to show you've still got it, you're willing to use it, and you haven't lost it. And maybe you just blew up a dry cleaner. Also, the general reminder that Sallust, the Roman historian, everything that rises sets, everything that grows old, and don't push your luck. Even though this guy looked like nothing in particular, and it was going to be your lucky day to make a public ass of him, it's when fortune is most propitious that she's least to be trusted. Livy, also the Roman historian. Now, the retired doctors that come to Grand Rounds, in my own experience, are looking for a little action. Let's see a little blood. The private practice guys are still working. The retired doctors who nevertheless come to Grand Rounds are in the very same demographic as the people who go to auto races to see accidents. And that's really about it. And they've seen one. Folks, nothing happened here. And they think of university Grand Rounds as one big game of whack-a-mole. You also put warning out there, listen, the Raymond Chandler type warning. This guy's going to make an ass of you. He thinks you talk too damn much, and too damn much of it's about you. See, that's a mistake. Michael Corleone said it the best: be careful what you tolerate. You're teaching people how to treat you. That is good. The prospectus, and you'll get some nodding in there. Bob Newhart saying it with a group of things you don't understand, making sounds you don't understand, no matter what the hyenas sound like. I'm pretty sure they're not actually laughing. The Joker, I give a man a plane ticket, he'll fly for a day, but you push a man out of a plane, and he'll fly for the rest of his life. George Burns said it the best about aging. As you feel it yourself, he said, first you start forgetting names, then you start forgetting faces, and then you forget to zip your zipper, and finally, you forget to zip your zipper down. They've got a picture of Tsar Nicholas here shoveling a little snow before the communists have taken that, before they murder that family. Find out who the enemy is. Worse, when your government tells you who the enemy is. Revolution's when you figure it out for yourself. Roundsmanship's about figuring out who the enemy is. Randall Tex Cobb said it the best. You make a mistake in tennis, 15 love. You make a mistake in baseball, strike one. You make a mistake in boxing, and you're on your ass. And that's your end rounds too. Don't give them that. Thank you. Please watch further Bond reports.